Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday and Taking Flight. My name is Victoria Wasinger, and I'm the Program Director for the Entertainment Business Masters and the Business Intelligence Masters here at Full Sail University. And I have an amazing co-host with me today, Dr. Rebecca Leis.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rebecca Leis. I am over the Computer Science and User Experience programs here at Full Sail.
And we are streaming live from the Orlando Health Fortress, and we're also streaming online on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Today's episode is called Tech-Driven Protection with AI, Cloud, and Cybersecurity. So we have an amazing panel with us today. Let's introduce them first.
Fantastic. So our panel today, we have Rajiv Menon, CEO of Informulate and founder of Airco. We also have Elton Morrison, Director of Corporate Cybersecurity from Cognizant. Carol Cox, who is a course director in the digital marketing program here at Full Sail, and also founder and CEO of Speaking Your Brand. And Jason Ross, CEO of TSM Studio and president of Next Move. Thank you all for being here. I'd love for you to give us a little bit about yourself. So we'll start with Rajiv.
Thanks, Bex. As Bex mentioned, I'm the CEO at Informulate. We are almost 2 decades old now, based here in Orlando. We're a custom application development company mixed with innovation consulting. So what that means is not only do we help you build awesome digital products, we make sure that those products are actually going to help solve the actual user need by helping you come up with data-driven decision-making and other roadmap decisions along the way. We are very proud to be a part of this event here. I've been in and out of this campus for a while now. Actually, another thing that I do is I run a nonprofit organization in the tech and entrepreneurship space called Orlando Innovation League, and we've partnered with Full Sail in the past to do an event here, and of course, we look forward to doing more in the future. Thank you for having me.
Of course, Elton.
Good day, everybody. Elton Morrison, Director, Cybersecurity for Cognizant. Cognizant's a global company. We have well over 300,000 associates across the globe. We're in every kind of industry you can think of, from banking to healthcare to you name it, we do it. Been in cybersecurity for a long time, got my start, 8-year Army veteran as well. So thank you for having me. I do have 2 kids that go here as well, so it's great to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Carol Cox. It's great to be here. So I have been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, starting in the technology field as a software developer for large Fortune 500 companies building their tech systems. Now I own a company called Speaking Your Brand, where we focus on mission-driven communications for our clients. I also teach here at Full Sail University business and marketing classes for the past 15 years, and I've been very much involved in the technology community here in Central Florida for the past 20 years as well.
Hey everybody, Jason Ross. 2 days from now will be my 21st year of graduating here from Full Sail, so it's pretty cool. I'm Full Sail student, just like you guys. Some of you may have not even been born yet. It's all good. I own a company here in Orlando called TSM Studio, which is going to be 21 in March. We focus on, we have a full-scale recording studio, and we also do marketing, production, and design. For the last 20 years. About 8 years ago, I started a company called Next Move. We opened up about 45 franchises across the country for real estate, and I'm the co-director of Keller Williams Sports Entertainment.
Awesome. Wow. We have such an incredible panel, and I just want to share with you a little bit about the topic. So we're going to be talking about how businesses can incorporate emerging tech into their day-to-day operations so that they can maintain resilience in this very fast-paced environment. So some of you are from the tech world, some of you are from the business world, but there's no question how important staying up to speed with technology is for business. So if you don't mind, I know Rajiv and Carol and Jason are going to talk a little bit about what is the importance of resilience and the role innovation plays in building successful companies in today's fast-paced digital landscape. Rajiv, if you don't mind kicking it off.
Happy to, yeah. If you don't mind, I'll start with a little bit of a story. I heard this at a conference a while ago, and it just stuck with me because it's just a perfect analogy for the pace of disruption in today's world. So how many people here have seen the movie Frozen? Okay, I expected every hand to go up there. But the opening sequence for that movie, right? What are they doing? They're cutting into a frozen lake, and they're taking the ice out, and then they're shipping that ice out because that's how people got ice back in the day, right? So over 100 years ago, pre-refrigeration, that's how they did things. Now, Obviously, things have changed since then. So the next wave of disruption was industrial ice factories, where they had these refrigeration units, but they were so big and expensive that only large factories could have them. And they would still make big blocks of ice, and they'd ship it out, right? And the next wave, you started getting them in groceries and all that kind of places, so you didn't really need somebody to ship the ice to you. And then finally, of course, now we're all used to having a refrigerator or a home ice box at home. You can get ice whenever you want. Now, how many companies do you think that were solving that problem of getting people ice in the first wave made it to the second wave? It's a very small number. I don't think any of them actually made it to the next wave because it was a completely different technology. But they were solving the same problem, getting people ice. And the same thing happened in the next wave. A very small amount of people that were in industrial refrigeration actually end up doing something in the grocery refrigeration, and so on. So it was, what the point there is, every wave of disruption that comes in, if you're not focused on solving the customer's problem, you're going to be left behind. If you're focused on a technology that you have, maybe you were really good at cutting into the lake. Well, if you're really focused on that skill set, but you're not looking at the customer and what they're looking for, you are going to be left behind. So I think it's probably a good analogy for all the things we're facing today and as we will face in the future disruption to come. But the only difference is things that used to take decades are now going to take years. And so we just have to make sure that as we look at resilience and facing the waves of disruption that come up, that we're always thinking about the customer and the use cases first.
Thanks, Rajiv. And as a student of history, I really appreciate that story of how disruption changes what we're doing within our business. And if we think about resilience and innovation, so there are things that we do within our business to stay innovative so that we're keeping up with technology, whether it's AI, cloud, mobile, whatever it happens to be, so that we make sure that we're staying productive and efficient. But there's also, as Rajiv mentioned, the customer. So how are we serving the customer? And I love that he said that he heard that story at a conference. Because as humans, we remember stories. So think about, for your business, what is the story you're sharing with your customer, with your audience, your brand story? How is what you're doing within your company, your innovation with tech and AI, how is it serving your customer? Maybe you can scale more of your services because of AI. You can reach a larger market share. Maybe you can also personalize what you're doing in a way that you couldn't before because of what AI can do for you. I know we're going to talk about some use cases here with that as well.
Yeah, also, I like to talk about speed, convenience, and expertise. So when we brought up this point, I asked if I could make a comment on this because one of the things that I've watched over the years of being in business is people's attention spans start to go lower and lower. You know, we went from a 5-minute video on YouTube to a minute-long video to, you know, now if it's 10 seconds and it's not really catching your attention, you're on to the next thing. And customers react the same way, and they want their service, product, whatever, the same way. So utilizing AI and disruptors in business, if you're paying attention to it, should be helping you with moving it along and getting a little bit more of a faster pace to get what they want quicker, because as this continues, people are going to lose a little bit more of their patience, and they're going to want stuff. Everybody wants it right now. So that's a way that AI can really help out.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jason, you've started several businesses. Would you mind sharing some examples of some of the common mistakes that businesses make when they're planning for disruption and how those things could be avoided?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when someone starts a business, there's two things that happen. They get complacent or comfortable, or they kind of have an ego. You know, I've worked with a lot of people over the years. You know, I thought I knew a lot at 5 years in. I thought I knew a lot at 10 years. And then at 20 years, I realized, like, I'm always learning. If you're not watching trends and if you're not talking to the experts, that's a big piece. Because, you know, if you go back to Rajiv's story about the ice, right? It's the people that are starting to make the ice, as opposed to pulling the ice, the people pulling the ice, if they had been paying attention, they might have started asking questions and been like, we're going to be obsolete soon, right? So it's very important that you're reading trends, magazines of your industry, you're going to conferences, you're learning from people, and making sure that you're vetting them and that they're trusted so that you're not just wasting your time and all of a sudden you become obsolete.
Thank you.
So my next question is for Elton. You are our cybersecurity person, right? And we actually have some IT and cyber students in the audience. As you're in your role for cybersecurity, it's all about recognizing and mitigating issues. How is cybersecurity changing and protecting the business landscape?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, especially related to this topic. When you look at AI and it's come onto the scene, how is that impacting how we operate in cybersecurity? If you look at what cybersecurity professionals do, and let's look at one specific aspect of it, Security Operations Center. These are the folks that are looking at the events, the log files, the attacks that are happening real time within these companies or against certain networks. That's, in some ways, millions of events happening at the same time. How many people do you really need to look at that? Could take years to get through that data. So using the technology out today like AI, we're able to minimize the manual overhead needed and have people looking at this data. And we can use those AI models and train those to actually see the trends, see the attack vectors, see the anomalies in events. Like, hey, this person logged in normally from the US and Florida at this time, and for some reason they're logging in at Russia today at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right? Those kinds of heuristics and data modeling you can do with these AI models really helps to decrease the manual effort and gets us quicker to the problem to resolve it. So that's probably one of the biggest things happening today in the industry.
And speaking of AI, I just recently watched a seminar that Carol gave on using AI for podcasting. And I know you brought some slides from your seminar with you today to share with us. So I was wondering, could you provide some of the examples of how you've incorporated AI into your day-to-day operations to make your company more resilient?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So I have been hosting my podcast called Speaking Your Brand for over 7 years, 410 episodes and counting. It comes out every single week. So of course, when ChatGPT came out and all these other AI tools, I immediately started thinking, how can I use AI to not only become more productive and efficient, so kind of automate those repetitive tasks that I'm doing with my podcast, but then also, what are some activities that, as a business owner, as a marketer, that I should be doing, but just don't ever get around to doing and don't have time to do? So that's the second use case. And the third use case is actually using AI to look at my existing content, in this case, my podcast, and find things that I couldn't see because I'm too close to my content. So let me touch on number 3 first, and then we'll go back to number 1. So last year, what I did is I took all of my podcast transcripts, and I fed it into OpenAI's API, and I had it look through all of it. It did its insights, and then I asked it questions about it. So what are trends that you see in the podcast content? What are themes? And here's the big one. I said, what are gaps that you see? Here's my listenership, my audience. What am I not talking about that I should be? And I thought I had covered everything after all those episodes, and it actually found things that I hadn't covered. And so I immediately did podcast episodes about that content. So that's a great use of AI. Let's go back to number 1, which is automating those repetitive tasks. So if we can go to the next slide. Every single week after I record a podcast, I have to write the show notes, write the email newsletter, write the LinkedIn post, write other social media posts, send an email to the guest, create the graphics for that episode. So what I have done, we can go to the next slide, is I've used an incredible automation tool called make.com, which sets up a workflow like the one that you see here. And so what happens is that we put together the MP3 file for the podcast, the audio file. I drop it into a Google Drive folder, and then the magic behind the scenes, it begins. I don't have to touch it. After I drop that audio file in the Google Drive folder, behind the scenes, it creates a transcript, and then it goes in, and then it updates Airtable, and it continues on. So it uses ChatGPT to write the show notes, and then it writes the LinkedIn post, and then it writes the email newsletter. We can go to the next slide. And then it even creates the graphics specifically for that episode with my photo or the guest photo, the title of the episode, the link to the episode, the series that it's in, and so on. So I haven't had to do anything. I'm just going about my day, and it's doing all of this. And then it puts everything back into a Google Drive folder and updates Airtable. Can't imagine how much time this has saved, but also mental bandwidth, because I have other things to do in the business, as do my assistants and the people who work on my podcast than that. So that's a great example of thinking of those automated repetitive tasks that you can put into workflows and use AI for that. Now we can go to the next use case, which is lead hyper-personalization. So that's that second use case category, which is those activities that you know you should be doing, but you just don't get around to doing. In this case, it's reaching out to leads on LinkedIn because I want to grow my podcast listenership, but I don't have time to go find all their profiles, send them a message, and also personalize that message. So now when someone subscribes to my email newsletter, it immediately, we can go to the next slide, or we don't have it. Well, it goes to another make.com scenario where it goes, finds their LinkedIn profile, reviews it, and then writes them a hyper-personalized message based on what's in their LinkedIn summary, and recommends my podcast episodes that best fit them. Now, there's still a human in the loop. I still go through, read the message. I actually then edit it, make sure it's what I want it to sound like, and then I actually go into LinkedIn and send it. So it is important. I'm not just letting the AI do all of that work, but it's an incredible time saver and helps me to grow the business in a way that I haven't been before.
Yeah,
Wow.
just to jump in there real quick, you're giving me ideas, Carol, because I have a podcast too called 2M2X, and I generally use AI for writing the transcripts and because it knows my voice and everything like that. But I'm going to add a few steps now that I learned this from you.
This
You
is
should
also
go
like
talk
what
to her when
we
you're
were
done.
just talking about too, where how much time, or if you had to pay somebody to do that. I mean, one way or the other, time is money, and that's saving you time and money by creating that automation.
Right, and that way we frees us up to do more creative tasks, doing the things that we love to do, and getting rid of some of these automated things where we can still look at it and customize it, but now we have so many more areas we can explore within the business.
I love that. Wow. Thank you for sharing that example with us and showing us how to really maximize what AI can do for us. And I know, sometimes people hear about these processes and then they get a little scared, like, oh, it's going to replace the humans. So I know Jason and Rajiv both have some comments on this next question. How can companies blend the human expertise with AI and automation to create a more robust and resilient operation?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Oh.
Okay. So I think the problem statement is that, one of the problem statements is that there's so many different use cases, and Carol gave us a great example of how you can apply AI and automation for a specific use case. And a lot of companies are still on the fence, and I think there's been a lot of disruption caused by AI that companies don't really know where they fall. There's questions about risks. I know we're going to get into that shortly. That's holding them back from jumping in. And in some places, they're even shutting down access to some of these tools. Other places, they're like, okay, you're on your own. We'll get you an enterprise license, and then you guys use it in your day-to-day stuff, which is putting a lot of pressure on the employees to figure all this stuff out that really it's the business's responsibility to do. So I'm a big fan of workflow automation, and for me, I think it's really comes down to the businesses prioritizing based on what they think the bottlenecks are in the business, or the big, I usually ask them, what's your biggest risk or your biggest opportunity, right? And if you want to address the risk first, if you have a big risk. And once you understand that, you want to backfill the automation based on what your analysis of the workflow is. And so my recommendation is, we're in phase 1 of adoption, probably into phase 2 a little bit, of where AI is just request response, right? It's not going to do anything. It's going to sit there until you ask it a question. That's request response. You ask it a question, it gets you back a response. Now, the second wave is going to be more agent-driven, and I think a lot of folks in the room probably heard the phrase agent-driven AI, where think of AI as an employee, just like you would Slack an employee or communicate with them, send them, hey, do this thing for me, and they do it for you. That's agent-driven, so you have specialized agents, AI agents that can help you with various tasks. And I think the third phase for me is the most exciting one that I'm helping explore myself, and I'm going to put myself on the spot by saying we're pioneering this to some extent because we're figuring out the holes with this, how it works. But objective-driven AI, where AI is not just waiting for you, but is leading the process, and it understands the place you want to go. You want to go from point A to point B. We've done this a few times with a lot of different people. I know the steps you need to take. Let me ask you questions. Let me find out what's unique about your situation, and then let me craft the path for you to go from point A to point B. So I think that's extremely exciting because nobody needs to be an AI expert. Nobody needs to be a prompt engineering expert anymore. And you just have this well-crafted, objective-driven AI that's going to be your superpower going forward.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that as well, which is all outstanding points. When we look at adding, human interaction with that as well, and how do we blend that human interaction with the AI, when we look at whether it's objective or the other models that he mentioned, the other key component is the AI model is only as good as the data that's being put in. right? We've probably all heard the term of AI hallucinations, right? Where it will make something up based on the data that it has. It's not accurate, it's not even true. So we always need some type of human review of that data to make sure it's accurate. And also the people interacting with the system need to be knowledgeable enough in the area to understand what they're getting back makes sense, right? Because you get those hallucinations, it could make stuff up. So that's a cyber perspective on that, is just making sure, understanding, again, it's only as good as the data put in, understand what you're getting back, and make sure it's accurate.
So I would say one of the big things about the human interaction, right, is we still have to have the ideas, right? AIs. So, and every industry has some need for automation, and I'm just going to use an example. So, in one of my real estate ventures, we have a stable of short-term rentals, and so I've made it where people come to us and they say, "I'm looking for something in this area." And we're building an AI model that will be able to take the address. It will go through all the data of any other short-term rentals in that area, pull it all together, and come back and say, here's a probability of what you're going to make ROI based on how much occupancy you can have. So we do that now manually, and it's very difficult to sit there and you have to go through everything. But as a human, I created the formula on how does this work. And now AI is the thing that's going to take that formula, kind of like what Carol did. She came up with what she needed, but then built out that process. And so I feel, there's going to need to be a human interaction, and that's how we're going to blend them together.
Yeah, if I could, I think I'm going to steal your term when you mentioned in the back. It's your creative assistant, right? I really like how you coined that term. That's perfect.
Yeah, I really see AI as a creative thought partner. I ask it questions and we'll bounce ideas off of each other. But to Jason's point, I have to have the initial idea. So for example, if I'm putting on a speaking workshop, I'm deciding to put this event on, and then I have to go ask the AI to help me figure out what's the best way to market and promote it to attract the type of clients that we want.
Yeah, it seems as if what will end up becoming mainly our goal is to start thinking about everything we do and how we can automate it, and then figuring out the system and how we're going to do that.
So in terms of, communicating with AI, right, they need to speak the same language, the same language models, right? And so my next question is for Rajiv. You recently launched an AI product. Congratulations. So tell us about this product, and then also how can AI and large language models offer solutions to companies, and what use cases actually work?
Thanks, Bex. So that's the product we launched, air.co. If anybody wants the URL, you can actually you can bring up the slide for that as well. That's the product we launched just last week, actually, at a startup weekend event, which is one of the events that my nonprofit does. I've been in the space, and the idea came from really trying to understand a particular domain really well, and that's where I'll also talk about the objective-driven aspects of it. But I've been helping startups and mentoring them now for about 10 years. I'm on the board of Rally, which is a social enterprise accelerator. I've also invested in about a half dozen startups myself. And so there's a wealth of knowledge that I've created with my expertise in a particular domain. Now, AI is the only way for you to take that knowledge and to scale it. So to all of you out there, whatever your domain of knowledge is, I think it's a great idea to create a GPT that takes your knowledge and allows you to scale what you do to a large number of people. But that's not enough. So one of the things we wanted to do with AIR is not just train a GPT with a knowledge base, which is something that's very easy to do, because as I mentioned, the problem statement is, if you do that, it's still a request response. So you're waiting for somebody to ask a question, and then they don't know if your app has the answer to that or not. So how far can you really take something with just a GPT? So we took it to the next level with objective-oriented AI, where we know that the users of this application, air.co, are founders that are first-time founders that are trying to take their idea and obviously want to generate revenue from it. So once we know that you're starting out here and you're ending up there, all of our knowledge comes into play, and it's the app that drives your progress. So it'll start by asking you about your idea, your value proposition, your customer segment. It'll identify risks for you. It'll identify opportunities for you to validate that idea, and it's all custom based on your unique idea. So at the end of it, you are being not just, and other micro innovations in there too, apart from the objective-driven aspects of it. So, we don't want people to type in large online forms. So it's a very chat-based interface. We don't want you to have to think of all the possible ways or different types of business models. So we give you choices that are auto-generated based on your ideas. So you just pick it. So really the idea is to reduce that friction and that barrier to entry that a lot of people have, and they have an idea, they don't know where to start. This is the perfect place to do that. And it's free right now for a download. So we're in beta version, and hope that everybody listening will have a chance to play with that and test that out. Now, when it comes to use cases that work, for me, there's a lot of use cases that are already in play that everybody who is not doing those really should be doing them, because there's opportunity cost involved with not doing a chatbot for customer service and not doing a chatbot for your website. That's just a no-brainer that everybody should be doing. All kinds of copywriting. I think Carol's was a great example of using, mimicking the voice and having copywriting that is absolutely seamless with the copy that you've been creating before, and you still have the human in the loop to help you take it that one step further to make sure there's no hallucinations or anything like that. Now, when it comes to idea generation, I also feel there's lots of areas that people aren't using it that they should be, for strategy, for risk management, identifying new risks, and really treat it like a consultant that you would have. But bear in mind, it's going to give you results based on how good your prompt engineering is. So I think the use cases that work, and there's a lot more use cases, I'm sure people can look it up in legal, in healthcare, in diagnosis. There's plenty of use cases out there. And at this point, everybody should not be looking at AI as something that's, hey, is it going to work? Is it going to stay? Is it like, NFTs? No, it's not like NFTs. This is here to stay. This is permanent. And, I really encourage everybody to really understand the use cases that are unique to their domain.
So true. So you mentioned hallucinations. We talked about those earlier. And then that kind of leads to people feeling like they can't trust what AI is spitting out. And then there's also the topic of, can you trust what you put in to be secure? So I was hoping you could dive into the big issue of the ethical challenges that arise when using AI and machine learning, and in cybersecurity in particular. And then also, how can companies navigate those challenges responsibly?
Yeah, so that's a huge topic, right? And anybody that's paying attention to the news, we know the EU has their AI Act that came out. They were the first ones to kind of publish their legal framework around the use and ethical use and responsible use of AI. The US is doing that now. I'm not sure when that will be released, but I can tell you that's one of the first principles we started to look at internally before we developed or even dove into that, was how do we responsibly use this? What are the ethical challenges surrounding it? It all centers around the data, right? Making sure the data is clean, unbiased, making sure that it's secure in such a way that it can't be tainted, making sure that the inputs that are going in are stripped of any personal proprietary information. Is the data itself contained within your jurisdiction, within your control? We also have cloud on the discussion as well. Many of these AI models tie directly to cloud environments, excuse me, and are offered up by the cloud service providers, whether it's AWS, Google, or Azure. Are those contained within your tenant? The other thing to consider when you're going into cloud environments is there's a concept of what's called the shared responsibility model. Depending on the type of service you're using, you as the customer are responsible for X number of tasks. The vendor's responsible for the others. So making sure we're taking care of the tasks that are responsible to us when it comes to security, whether it's identity, whether it's secure configuration, well, it's the network configuration. So all of those security elements come into play when we look at the large language models, when we look at AI in general. And again, working closely, I'm working more closely now than I ever have with our privacy departments and our legal departments to make sure that what we're doing passes muster from their perspective as well. So that's just really a high-level overview of that. Thank you.
That's a relief to hear,
yeah,
Chief.
Absolutely. And the ethical side of things, there are a lot of downstream effects that really have to be carefully understood and allow society at large to really chime in on some of those. These are political questions, these are legal questions, these are ethical questions. If you, at the top level, if you're looking at the macroeconomic and how that affects things versus all the way down to the individual contributors who are putting something that they created, and then the AI is now going to take the thing that they created, learn it, and know how to duplicate that at scale. So it really affects individual creators, content creators, artists, and everybody else like that. And there's two sides to the coin. We're going to have to let the courts figure out which side they're going to lean on. But there's jobs that are going to be displaced. We know that for sure. It's already happening today. I mean, pretty much all free customer service reps, there's freeze on a lot of those kinds of jobs. Even white-collar jobs like developers and things like that have been frozen to the large extent, especially at the large companies. The other piece is, when you train AI, what is it doing? It's learning just like a human would, right? I mean, nobody here in this room is creating something from scratch without having any training whatsoever. All of us are learning things based on something else another human did. So AI is doing the same thing, but the difference is AI, once it's learned something, it can produce stuff forever, 24/7, doesn't need to sleep, and who gets that money? It's not AI that's getting rich. There's a corporation behind it that's getting rich. So there's a whole different conversation to be had on, is that ethical for a corporation to take the combined knowledge of a lot of people and then replicate that at scale? So yeah, definitely some questions to be figured out. I don't think there's any easy answers, but we're just going to have to see how time plays it out.
Yeah, really quickly, one of the legal aspects and one of the things, the challenges that we've seen is if you're interacting with these models, OpenAI, ChatGPT is an example, and it produces a product, who owns that? Do you own that, or does ChatGPT own that? Those are the types of questions that are going to have to be answered, right?
And one more thing along those lines are deep fakes. So there are deep fakes that are unauthorized, and also from a security perspective, do you know who's on the other side of that Zoom window is really the person that you think that it is? But then Jason and I were talking before we came out here that we can create digital twins of ourselves, and we've experimented with that. So I can clone my voice. I mean, heck, there's tons of podcast audio out there with me. I can clone my likeness, and it's getting really, really, really good. So good that I'm kind of like on a Zoom type of video where it's not super high resolution. It's hard to tell if that's an AI avatar or if that's a person. The CEO of Zoom has said that his desire is that for us human workers to be able to send our AI avatars to Zoom meetings on our behalf. Now, I'm not sure exactly then what we're supposed to be doing as workers, but it sounds pretty good to me.
I don't know how I feel about that at all.
Sounds like a sci-fi movie, like Surrogates or something, right?
It's we were talking about that. I have this product that I use where I just spoke 30 seconds and now clone my voice. So I do a lot of voiceovers for things, and it's to the point now where I don't even have to go to the studio anymore. I literally type the script in it, and I can tell it's not me just from cadence, but in general, nobody in here would hear me do a voiceover, and then I'd play this, and you would know it was different, and it's a little scary. Yeah.
There's a
then
Forrest Gump.
Do you disclose that, right, to the consumers that is my digital twin is not really me?
No comment.
Right? I mean, it's a hard thing to
Ask
figure out.
my digital twin.
Yeah.
No, there's a Forrest Gump movie coming out where they're undoing the age regression or whatever it's called for Tom Hanks, and they're gonna they're able to bring back dead actors at this point and get them to replicate this. So, and who gets what out of this, and how do we control the profits that generated from this, and all of this is very much an open question.
That's the part that's scary from a legal standpoint. Are you all reading the lengthy terms and conditions of the software you're using to replicate your image and your sound of your voice? I don't read, I'm going to admit this on camera, I don't always read all of the terms and conditions every time I use something, but when it comes to you using your voice and your likeness, we have to now at this point because we just don't know what the future holds.
Well, even so, you're right, because I was actually thinking about you when you said that about the IP of these things, right? Like, I really actually haven't thought about that before, because when I did the voiceover, I have to read as I'm reading. It's read 30 seconds, but in the beginning say I give in video AI. It's pretty cool. Check it out. In video AI, my permission to use my voice, right?
Likeness.
And it's kind of like, well, does that mean I just gave that to them that they could use that on something else? So yeah, that's a really.
Read the license agreement.
Yeah, I know.
I think that leads into our next question, which is, thinking about, AI, using AI, and also hybrid work, remote versus hybrid work. With the rise of remote and hybrid work, how can organizations ensure that they remain secure in a decentralized environment?
Yeah, they love the cyber guy today. I like it. So yeah, remote work obviously has taken off and exploded in the last few years, especially since COVID, right? I remember when that hit, we were scrambling to get people the ability to remotely work in use cases where we had never considered that. So obviously this conversation, we're talking about AI and cloud exploded during this time because cloud has the ability to be accessed from anywhere, has the high availability. I can spin up resources, spin them down quickly based on load, right? So that was the perfect, medium to support that remote work capability, and also learning these new cybersecurity tools that are out there like Secure Access, Secure Edge, SASEs is what we call them, where really it puts all those controls up front and ensures the devices they're using are secure and how they're accessing the company resources is secure, and they're not leaving that boundary of the corporate infrastructure, even the cloud portion of that, unauthorized. So, yeah, it was a huge challenge, but I think without having technology like the cloud, I'm not sure that would have been successful, and it helped lead to even a greater expansion of use for those cloud technologies today.
I'm glad COVID-19 waited for cloud technology to be there before it did its thing.
Seriously. Well, speaking of COVID, I know Carol had some stuff to share here regarding just upskilling and that continuous learning that we all had to do. All of us had to do quite a bit of learning when the world locked down and we had all these new tools that some of us had never used, right? So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, and how do you encourage your employees to continue to learn so that we stay resilient in the workforce?
Yeah, so AI is here to stay, and there are so many different AI tools and use cases like we've talked about here today. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to dive into it because they're not sure how it's going to impact their job or what tasks that it's good for. But really, the only way to find out is to do it yourself. So if you're in an organization or a business, or if you're a business owner, empower your team to experiment, to go ahead and try the tools safely and securely, not with proprietary or sensitive data, of course. But you want to have each person figure out what is the use case for them. It really can't be a top-down approach where someone is telling them, go do this workflow or go do this process, because they need to figure it out for themselves. And Rajiv mentioned about his AI product, and that's such a great example of how AI can both scale what you're doing and personalize. And it used to be that those two things could not go together in a product or service offering. You had to pick one or the other, scale or personalization. Now you can do both. And so empower your team members to figure out how can they do that within the work that they're doing every day, whether it's in-house or customer-facing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned securely as the cyber guy. We're all paranoid, right? We got some cyber folks in here. But the other thing that I always consider from a cyber standpoint is enabling the business and enabling people to learn these new technologies. So it's important that we have the ability in the environments that are sandbox, that are POC or lab environments, that allow them to not necessarily access corporate data and corporate resources. It's isolated, but it allows them to learn these tools. And I mentioned this before, to break things. Most of the times I learned something, I broke it and had to go fix it myself. So, especially from a technology standpoint. So the cybersecurity piece of that is we have to enable that. We have to provide those isolated environments and allow that innovation to happen, even for our own teams in cyber. We look at penetration testing, or what we call offensive security. We're trying to break into things. So we need an environment for which we can do that that's obviously not on the corporate network. So it's key.
Yeah, just to jump in on Carol's point too, I think individuals have to definitely step up, because this world is changing quickly, where it's not just the corporations that are being disrupted, it's everybody. And so each individual needs to figure out how they're going to use AI to solve their own needs. And one of the things we used to do, whenever Google came out 15 years ago, before that, people didn't know to do something, you had to sit and teach them, right? Now we just say, Google it. Right now, in the next year, in the next generation to come, it's going to be, well, I'm not a content writer. You have ChatGPT, right? I don't know how to write a proposal. You have ChatGPT, right? So all of these skills, it's not just about information, it's about the whole skill, can now be enabled by ChatGPT, which is a big revolution for us.
It really is.
Yeah, so I think now we'll have some time for some questions. If anybody in the audience would like to ask questions, there's a mic in the middle of the room. If you have a question, please feel free to introduce yourself by name and your degree program. And we also have some online questions, so we'll start with our first one. I believe this is probably going to be aimed toward you, Elton. What do you think about how AI is getting integrated into penetration testing during red teaming, and how do you feel about the evolution over the field in cybersecurity?
I swear I did not read that before I answered the last question, because I literally just talked about red teaming, penetration testing, and offensive security. So when we look at the space, now that's not what I do for a living today. I did do pen testing in a previous life, but that area changes about every 18 months. It's completely different. It just moves so quickly. And AI is going to increase that pace. We talked about disruption before. But specifically, and I'm just going to kind of wing this, from my perspective, if you look at AI and the tool sets that are out there and the capabilities, things like Kali Linux, it's a set of scripts and tools put together where we have to input the data to go and find the vulnerabilities, try to attack that vulnerability, then pivot within the network and get to critical data, and then keep moving laterally within the network. If you look at the capabilities of AI, now you can feed them the vulnerability data. You can send it off to do its port scans. If it finds the vulnerability, the AI model itself can execute the vulnerability, and you can almost automate end-to-end, almost the entire attack cycle when you look at from a penetration testing. Again, that's probably pie in the sky right now, but it certainly could go that way.
Thank you. We have this question, I'm very curious to see what everyone's answers are. So AI saves time, but does it cut down on the wisdom gained throughout the journey?
Yeah, I'll take this one in my role as a course director here at Full Sail University. I teach in the digital marketing degree program. So yes, marketing very much impacted by AI. Back in January of 2023, as soon as ChatGPT came out, I integrated it into my classes because I knew how important it was for our marketing students to understand how AI was going to change their career and how they did their task. And so, but what they have learned themselves and what I have tried to impart to them is that they still need to know marketing fundamentals. If they don't understand how marketing works, what role it plays in a business, what marketing is supposed to do for the business, and what it's supposed to do for consumers, no matter what AI tool that they're going to use, it's not going to do them any good. So yes, you absolutely have to have expertise in your space, because then you know how to use the AI tools to your advantage, because that's where the learning and the wisdom comes, is in those foundation and the fundamentals.
Yeah, really quick, I think you're seeing some themes coming out of the conversation. Human in the loop. We talked about hallucinations and understanding what you're getting back. You still have to know your field. You still have to know how to do that. So I think that's going to be a common theme throughout some of the conversations around AI.
Yeah, I definitely have something I'd like to say about that. So there's all kinds of different factors that play into a question like that, right? So here's an example. I'm an example giver. I'm 47. Not the greatest at grammar. ChatGPT, number one thing I ever learned to use with it was I would write what I wanted to write, and then I would say, just change this grammar. Don't change what I wrote, just change the grammar. But so for that journey's over for me. So that journey's I'm not going to go back and learn that, right? But if you are let's say a 10-year-old and you're using that and you're not learning, like Carol was kind of saying, you're going to interrupt that learning and that journey. But then if you go back to the example of the short-term rental property thing that I'm talking about creating, I had to know what I wanted to make there, and I had to go through the process of doing it on my own manually, which took forever with other people, to come up with the process that we're now utilizing it to automate. So I'd say to answer that question, the journey is lost if you like Carol was saying, if you don't know the marketing principles and you're trying to use it, the journey's lost, but you're not actually asking the right questions. Whereas if you know what you want to do, and like for me, I know I'm not going to go back and learn 10th grade English.
English 101? No.
Right, yeah, no, I'm not that resilient, right? So I know that I'm going to use that. So I think to answer this question, there's no right or wrong answer there. It just depends on the factors involved.
If you don't mind me chiming on that as well, because I said one thing earlier that I want to give the counterpoint to my own point, which was I said everybody should learn how to use these tools and AI enable themselves. But to Carol's point and to Jason's point, you need the basics. You still need to understand what you're doing. And what's going to happen is the flip side to that is people who understand a particular domain, there's people who understand AI, and then there's people who don't know either, right? So the people that are going to succeed are the people who understand a particular domain and understand AI. So if you know a particular domain and you're AI enabled, you are going to beat, for lack of a better phrase, someone who has that domain expertise but are not AI enabled. So that's really the key piece. And unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of a, because AI can scale, it's going to be a bit of a winner-takes-all game where the first movers have the advantage. So it's absolutely critical that you get, first of all, get that AI enablement, and of course, bring your unique special skills, personalities, domain knowledge to the problem.
It's almost like it should just be another, it should be looked at as another skill, just like learning to write or read. AI should just be, that it shouldn't take the place of, right? It should just be another skill that you're adding to your toolbox.
Good point.
Absolutely. Do you think that then, just to add on to this because it's so interesting, the people who are going to benefit from AI the most right now are the ones that have that strong foundation, because they know how to identify when they've asked the wrong question and how to rephrase their question, or how to remove the bad data that they're getting out because they know what's incorrect about the results that they're seeing.
Yeah, you need the domain knowledge. You need to know how to use the tool correctly in your domain, understand the output of it, and how to integrate it into your workflow. That's really how it's going to work.
Yeah, that's based on the state of the art. Now, where does the future go? All bets are off, right? We don't know how much AI is going to progress and if AGI, artificial general intelligence, is going to be a thing, at which point all bets are off. We have no idea what AI is capable of and whether it can duplicate everything that we know, including domain knowledge.
Now we're back to the ethical, responsible use and the legal questions again. So yeah.
Well, we talked about agents before, so Maria showed those workflows in make.com. So I actually had to go and do all those, I had to put all of that together myself. With agents, I could just tell it, look, I have a podcast. AI knows what a podcast is. It knows all the tasks that are associated with the podcast. Here's my MP3 file, my recording. Go do all the automation. And I don't have to build anything like I have now. And at some point, I don't even have to script it or record it with my own voice.
Right.
I could just do it all
It's a
on its
podcast
own.
co-pilot.
It scares me. It's like when you say agents, I think of in the Matrix. You know, you're sending the world is
Mr.
coming to
Smith.
an end. I'm just kidding. That's not actually happening. Bex, I know you have another question.
I was actually going to add a little bit of a point to what our panelists were talking about in terms of like education. I know we've been focusing a lot on like cybersecurity and kind of focusing in on that particular aspect of it. But when we're talking about AI, one of the things that could help you through your journey is that we have these things, we have a taxonomy in education called Bloom's taxonomy. You have to start with the foundational information and work your way up to evaluating. And we've talked about how evaluation is so very important. But throughout that journey, you can also use AI to kind of help you and provide you feedback. And actually having immediate feedback is a little bit better during that process, because usually immediate feedback helps us move our short-term memory into long-term memory, which will allow us to learn from that particular aspect as we are going through whatever it is that we're trying to build, which is fantastic. But I'm going to shift now. I just want to double check and make sure that nobody in the audience has any questions. If you do, yeah, we have one. Introduce your name and then what degree program you're in.
Jafet Gonzalez, computer science. So, I mean, you guys kind of went over this a little bit. I was just wondering, are there any reasons we shouldn't use AI? Not necessarily like for unethical reasons, just reasons we shouldn't?
Great question. You got us stumped.
Good
We're
question.
thinking.
Yeah, so I think there are going to be some use cases where AI is not used. National security data, defense industry. There's going to be some areas where they're not going to allow those types of systems and those types of programs to run. Again, raises a large ethical responsibility question. So that's the first one that comes to mind. I'm sure there's others. But there will be some industries in some areas where they do not enable that type of technology for very good reason.
So you guarantee that Terminator will not happen?
I'm not saying that. I'll be back. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I could say if it becomes a crutch, so you feel like you're not developing a skill set that you want to develop on your own and you're just kind of turning to AI to go faster or to get it done quicker. But then I think back to that Google commercial that ran during the Olympics that got a lot of criticism. The ad was about a father helping his daughter write a fan letter to one of the Olympic athletes. And so the ad was for Google's AI tool, Gemini. And so the father told the daughter, go use the AI tool to write a fan letter to the athlete. It's like, well, what are you taking away from your daughter by not having her write the letter, like her own heartfelt message to the athlete that she admires? So I think that's a use case probably where AI is not a good benefit for that person.
Yeah, we talk about this a little bit in the computer science program at the beginning of like when is it appropriate, not appropriate to use certain things, right? We don't want you to copy and paste your content into ChatGPT and then copy and paste the answer back in. There should be some kind of like human AI layering. You should be evaluating it in some way. But some of the other reasons why you don't want to use it are, we were talking about military aspects. A lot of military companies might not necessarily let you use AI tools for security reasons. There's also some companies, will not let you use certain tools because it's not part of their tool set and they don't want you to use the competitors' tool sets. And they also don't want you to give out proprietary code as you are building out new things. So all of those things have actually happened in real life and are use case examples of why not to use AI. So we need to be very cognizant of how we actually utilize the tools and using them for, helpful and good reasons versus negative reasons.
And can I add to that? So it's kind of combining Rebecca's and Carol's points. If you use it as a crutch, and you're not doing any of the thinking for yourself, there are going to be situations where your computer's not available. I feel like a teacher saying, you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket, and
right.
Of course they were wrong. So I might be wrong 100 years from now. But currently, there are situations where you don't have the tool available, and you're having a conversation maybe with your boss or with some coworkers, and they'll ask you a question on the spot, and you have to be able to think through that answer and actually give that answer in the moment. It's the people who can do that. And maybe they learned how to take their thoughts further using AI prior to the meeting, but it's the people who can do that on their own in the moment that are going to get further in their careers. So just don't forget about building that foundation because it's going to serve you in your life.
Yeah, a good example. All of us up here on the panel, we don't have AI running, right? We have to think on our feet and answer from domain experience and knowledge. So it's, yeah.
Yeah,
that was a great question, man.
It was a great
question. It was a great question. Just to provide an alternate perspective, not necessarily something I subscribe to, but all of the things we just talked about, those are existing social norms, right? And those are things that we're comfortable with in terms of human interaction today. But is that going to hold 5 years, 10 years from now when kids are growing up with ChatGPT, just like the electronics that the kids use today? They're just growing up with that being there as a thing. So why would they not use it if it's there, right? And it's just like the calculator analogy, right? So if we grow up in a certain world, we're not going to look for solutions outside of it. So maybe the future is going to present other ways that everybody is supported by that. And of course, I don't want to bring this up because I know Elon Musk is controversial, but Neuralink, right? I mean, that's like what is that going to do for us if it ever works? I mean, it's just going to enable everybody's brain to be continuously connected in real time to the whole internet. And how does that change human life? So it's a very, very hard question. So I think the jury is definitely out.
Definitely a good question.
Yeah, the other thing that's really important to remember about AI is that we are also teaching it. So it's just like a toddler. If you teach it to do bad things, it's going to do bad things. So don't teach it to do bad things, and don't name your product Skylink. We have another question.
I'm Alejandro, and I'm on the cybersecurity degree. You mentioned AI use for red team, but what are some uses for blue team?
Refresh me again on blue team. It's been a while since I've been in that space.
I mean, it's pretty much the guys that are defending the information in comparison to red team that are the ones who are
so I mentioned tools earlier like the SOC, right? Like the SIM, the log aggregation, being able to look at the plethora of events that you get in at any given time and understand what the trends are, where the attack vectors are coming in, being able to tie a firewall event to an IDS event to a vulnerability on a VM or a physical machine, and then looking at can that pivot from there. We can do that as a human, but having those AI systems do it for us greatly increases the speed to get to that vulnerability and that attack vector and fix it. Looking also at the cloud, there are technologies called cloud native application protection platforms, a code to cloud type build. The AI components in there, you can also use what they call co-pilots, and you can look at, again, at the plethora of data, and you can ask it, what's my greatest vulnerability in this environment, and it'll pop it up for you. So again, it's going to take the place of a lot of the manual work that you're doing from a blue team standpoint and really get you to focus and get the person to the right place in your environment with the greatest risk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have another question from online. So considering that many of us do not have cyber and IT work experience and that there's a barrier to entry into the cybersecurity field, what advice can you offer us in relation to obtaining employment?
Training, education is key. So we've already had a couple of folks ask a question in here. Going to Full Sail for cyber, that's a great start. Get your degree. I will also say you don't have to start in cybersecurity. I was fortunate enough to get my start in cybersecurity a long time ago when I was in the Army, and then built my way up over time. But you can start anywhere. Get the training. Certifications are outstanding. I know some certifications, there's barriers to get them. You have to have experience before you can even get them. But there are other certifications and training out there. I would just learn as much as you can. Go to college, get your degree. And yeah, find people in the industry, talk to them, get them to mentor you. LinkedIn's a great resource for that. And then you can find your way into that field. There are plenty of openings. There's more work than we know what to do with. Literally on my team, I could probably use 20 more people. Now, I'm not funded for that, but you get what I'm saying. There's plenty of opportunity out there. You know, mentor, training, and education is key.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question in the audience.
All right, my name is Jarrell Walton. I'm a cyber student. My question is, how do you, with AI speeding up and becoming so relevant, how do you stay relevant as an IT and cyber student? And what advice would you give coming out into the workforce? And I got a kind of two-part question. Also, I'm a veteran as well, and a lot of the guys that's in school with me are vets. So how do you mix that? Well, specifically for you, you mix that training from the military into IT, you know, preparing for something like that.
Yeah, so I think the first part of your question about staying relevant, I think, Jason, you had some conversations on that, and one of the previous questions, industry newsletters, industry conferences, read as much as you can, find those good sources of truth and sources of data, and remain relevant. I mean, AI is a great example. I've been in the industry 20 years, 51 years old. I mean, AI came out. I could have very easily said, I'm not going to worry about that. But you go out and you learn, you get the training. You know, I'm fortunate where I work in my company, there was a lot of free training. Take advantage of that. So again, it's just learning continuously. I know the folks that are here and folks that are online that are in college, your education doesn't stop when you get your degree. It's every day. And especially in this field, when you're in IT and cyber, it changes almost monthly in some cases. So you got to stay up to date. You got to have the discipline and the drive to do that. Now, from the veteran standpoint, what do I bring? Again, I mentioned discipline. I think that's part of it. The rigorous training that we did in the military, it just drives into you the steps and the process you need to be successful. And I bring that every day to work. If I'm not learning something new every day, something's wrong. If I'm not making a difference in my team or in a process or in an application, you know, I need to do better the next day. So it's that drive and that discipline that you get, I think, really helps us succeed.
I appreciate it.
If I can follow up on that too, I think part of it is just recognizing what certain technologies and what the use cases are. I think we covered quite a few really good use cases for AI here. But same thing with whatever technology you're interested in. This is a generalized answer to anybody who's trying to keep up with tech, because everybody who's in any form of tech has to keep up with all kinds of information coming out. Part of it is just knowing what box to put it in, right? So this is a tool I will use for this purpose and this purpose. So having a list of those things, you can't, of course, be an expert on everything. That's just impossible for anybody to do. It don't matter who you are. So part of it is knowing I'm going to use this tool, and I'm a consultant, so I have to know when I talk to a customer, hey, you've got this kind of problem. I'm not an expert in that space, but I know what that space does, and I know who to call in order to help you with that, right? So part of it is you going out in the workforce, knowing at least, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean at a high level, and knowing when to pull what tool out of the box.
Last thing, and this is more from a business perspective, not just these guys are way more technology than me, but just first of all, thank you for your service. And if there's somebody else over there, thank you guys. That's a big deal to me. Everything that they said and what I said earlier, like, you know, figuring out who's the experts in whatever you are interested in, and always continuing to learn and figuring out like where you're going to get the advice from. But the military side of that too is companies, businesses love to have military employees, love to have people come on that they're in the military. There's a lot to be said about the discipline and the honor of somebody from the military. So my advice just from a business perspective and having like one of my real estate ventures is helping military folks PCS across the country. And what we've learned is, if you look at what you learn there, your skills, and devise how you can make that coincide with the cybersecurity, and the fact that you're protecting the U.S. is part of that, and figure out how that's an advantage for you guys, because a lot of people we love you guys for that. Like, I couldn't do that. So hopefully from a more a regular business use case, that might be helpful.
The other thing that we haven't mentioned quite yet is if you have security clearance, put that on your resume, because that
Yes, please.
also, because that will help. And then the other thing too that is really important is, as a Full Sail student, as part of your enrollment, you get access to LinkedIn Learning and O'Reilly Books. Both have video and text resources that you can explore and that. And then if you want to go beyond that, there's also a newsletter that I subscribe to called TLDR AI. And there's ones for like web, there's one for design, but that's the one that I find that is most useful. And what they do is they kind of summarize all of the AI news that's coming out during that time.
Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bex. That's a good one.
All right, we have another audience question.
I'm Ricoberto, and I'm in the film program. And please forgive me, my notes just deleted themselves, but this isn't exactly a conversation. I just want to spark a conversation between the six of you. This might even interest the individual who brought up national security. I'm assuming that you know what social engineering is, like in terms of security and all of that. AI can be used to social engineer. An example of this is there are reports of phone scammers using AI voices to trick individuals into sending them money. And there are some people who can actually detect images and video generated by AI, although a lot can't. And I'd like to ask the six of you if you see a future of there being a role of people whose entire job is to detect these anomalies within media.
Yeah, it's a good question, and you both mentioned digital twin, right? That could be used for malicious activity as well. We've already seen it in the wild today. Email phishing campaigns are much more sophisticated. They look real. There's also reports of folks getting calls that sounds like their CEO. So these things are happening today. As far as individuals where that's their job, I think there's going to be a component of that. There's going to be a discipline that's looking for those deep fakes and those other AI-generated attacks. But I think software is also going to play a role in that. They're going to look at key indicators in the software itself, in the code, to see whether or not this is original content or if it's something that was generated by an AI-type tool. So yeah, that's my perspective on it. Anybody else?
The best way to combat social engineering is knowing how social engineering works. One, so you can recognize when it's happening. We also have AI tools out there that actually do that for us. So we have, fake detection, fake news detection. We have a whole bunch of different tools that can spot those things now and pull them down immediately. The other thing that's really important is also just knowing, having critical thinking skills. So critical thinking is something that comes up. We have what we call program advisory committees, and this has come up a number of times in a number of different subject areas. Critical thinking is very important, and so having the skill of thinking, does this sound plausible? Would my CEO actually ask me to buy 50 $10 gift cards from this particular company? That doesn't sound like it would be plausible, because I am not the person that does the purchase for that kind of stuff. So you have to that's an easy one to think of, but there are also other examples of just critically thinking, asking, would somebody in this position actually ask me to do this particular job?
Which one of you is into cybersecurity? Oh, okay. Imagine a scenario where someone would use AI images, video, or voices to break into systems. What methods would be used to circumvent that?
Well, that's hypothetical at the moment. We probably should talk after, because I need to think on that one a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to say something about what you asked. This is kind of a funny example, and this will also show you how old I was when I went here. It was when I came here, it was when all of us, like Napster was out, and all of a sudden everybody was stealing MP3s. I know that's a long time ago, man. So
Napster.
And everybody was like, well, what are we going to do? Because everyone can steal music now, right? But guess what? Just like everything, when it comes out, it's like, what are we going to do? But then somebody creates something to combat that, right? So at some point in time, we might all have something on our phones or on our computers at our house, something that when you receive, almost like a email phishing, when it comes through, this looks kind of sus. So what if they're kind of see like we were saying, software or things where we have those and it's able to pull out and find the data in there that's like, this isn't a real thing, or this is a third generation, be careful, that kind of thing. Because I heard that same thing. Somebody had a voice of like their mom call and said they were kidnapped or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen those too.
Yeah, it's wild. So that's terrifying that's like that now, because we're just getting started in this whole scene. So my thought is somebody will, just like they came up with Spotify and iTunes and all these things that stop people from just straight stealing music all the time, which people still do that. But I'm just saying, I don't really. But no, they would come up with some software or something like that could prevent that from happening, or 90% of the time.
Where there's a problem, there is an opportunity, and that's where we're looking at your generation to fix this.
Help us.
And if you have an idea, go to air.co and let's figure out how to make it a startup.
I'm going to switch over to one of our online questions. In your experience, what are some of the key elements that contribute to building a successful digital brand in today's fast evolving tech landscape?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take that one since my company's called Speaking Your Brand. So I'll mention two elements. One is pretty obvious, which is find your niche. So figure out what you're going to focus on, find your audience, and find your channel. There are tons of channels out there: TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc., Discord, whatever it happens to be. Where's your audience at, and where do you like to create content for? What feels good to you? So start there. That's the first thing. And there's so much more to that, but that's the short answer. The second thing, which is more counterintuitive, which is build relationships with people in your space and with adjacent spaces. The reason that my businesses have been successful over the years is not because of the technology, frankly. It's because of the relationships and the network that I have built, mostly here in Central Florida where I've lived, but also online. Because those are the people who are going to collaborate with you, who are going to showcase you on their platforms and help you to build your audience and your business.
That's spot on. That's it. Like, your network is your net worth, they say. Like, 100% done.
Yes. The other thing that's really important about networking, especially here while you're a student, is that it helps you not only build a support system for after you're done, but currently also while you're going through school. And sometimes, particularly in some of the tech-related fields, I would identify as like an introvert, right? And it's really hard to network sometimes as an introvert. And so one of the things that I suggest you do is going and being a part of clubs, because clubs are a guaranteed shared hobby, which you can totally geek out on. So that's something that I highly suggest that you do while you're here as a student.
I think we just answered one of the questions we were struggling with, as in how do you stay competitive when AI can do everything that you can do? Well, your network. There you go. That's the answer. So it is absolutely true. I agree with everything Carol just said. To layer that one step up is, when you realize who your audience is and who you're talking to, who are the other people that this audience trusts, is the question that I normally ask. And I always encourage all my startups to find out, hey, if you don't have to compete with somebody, they might be offering a service that's very similar to yours, but your audience already trusts them. So why don't you partner with them instead of competing with them? And that's what we're doing, actually. Again, I'm sorry to have another shameless plug for air.co, but that is a critical part of our business model. Is we're building a startup accelerator, which is virtual. There are lots of physical accelerators out there. What did we do? We could have gone head to head, but there's absolutely no reason to. We would much rather, when we have a multi-tenant version of this, where startup accelerators in the real world would use our platform to serve all of those folks that they were unable to accept into their workshops, into their existing cohorts. So that's an idea for you, and yeah, network. That's the bottom line.
I love that message. Thank you. Collaborate, don't compete. Although I guess there's a place to compete, but collaboration is going to get you further. So we have a wonderful question from an alumni online. This alumni owns and operates Ready Talk Radio and wants to know, how can AI help radio?
I have a suggestion. So there are actually AI tools out there right now that will translate for you, so you don't need a translator to help you. It's typically used in film, but it could be easily adopted into radio.
That's a good point.
I would say there's audience engagement. So when we were doing Startup Weekend, there was a lot of questions that people always had, like, how does this event work? What am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Can I bring this? Can I bring that? And of course, we were answering the same questions all over again. So we just created a phone number that you could text your questions to. And of course, that went to AI, which was already had the FAQ. So there's all kinds of engagement. And radio is really hard to do engagement because, it's a one-way kind of medium. It's not an internet or it's a live stream. But you can engage the audience in a lot of different ways if you're having contests, and you can do all this stuff. You can get feedback from what kind of stuff they want to see. You can have AI do a workflow like Carol does. And Carol, if you want to jump in on this, feel free. But something like that to help generate content too.
Yeah, along with the workflows to automate things is also feed the AI some of your content, your radio shows, and have it analyze how can it be improved. I know that in my podcast analytics, I can see where the vast majority of the audience drops off. So do they listen to 60% of the episode or 80% of the episode? So then I can start feeding that audio to the AI, and it can help me to improve. Like, it may say, okay, like, you need to move this section up here. You need to have a better tease at the front of the episode to keep people listening. So that's another great use of AI.
Yeah, and as the cyber guy, I'll say, if you're uploading your data, make sure you still own it when you do, and make sure that it stays within your control, right? That's key.
So
All right,
true.
we have one more audience question. You want to?
Hello, I'm Kevin. I'm in game design. And what I would like to ask is, what do you think AI, like what fields do you think in the making of video games will AI play a part of, and also in the marketing aspect?
I think in every field.
All of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's just the gaming engine that you guys are using, right? I mean, there's already ML and machine learning, and you can do some AI stuff in there as well. So I think every aspect of that can possibly be touched by AI in some way, shape, or form. And again, the key is you need to understand the domain and then understand how you take that tool and where to apply it within that workflow, right?
So there's no game specific, like there's no AI that's going to say, hey, make a game for me, right? So there's different tools that can help you with different components of making a game. So for example, you can use something like ChatGPT to help you with your NPC conversations. You can add it into your game and have them have more realistic conversations versus like a pick your own adventure. It's either this or this. So you can use that now. But if you're interested in learning more about AI for gaming, we actually do have a class coming out called AI for Games through our DC3 offerings, and that will be coming out soon. So be on the lookout for that.
That's even a better answer. They're having a class.
She must teach in this area, I guess. Thank you. Did you have another question? No? Okay. We have another one from our online students, or our online audience, I should say. How do you handle the barrier of entry for machine learning engineers, somebody who's transitioning into software engineering as a machine learning engineer?
Yeah, I think that barrier to entry is coming down really quickly, and part of it is tools like Copilot and other AI-enabled code generation tools. Again, the point goes back to you need to know your basics before you play with those tools and make sure that you understand what component needs to be used for what purpose. But that barrier to entry is absolutely crashing, and it's. I recently read one of the top AI engineers in the world saying that it's moved so fast, so quickly, that at this point, he doesn't even remember half the code that he writes because he's just enabling AI to write the code for him, and the logic and the components are so complex that you absolutely need AI tools to write AI code now.
We also have a AI concentration of the computer science program. So if you are already a software engineer, it's likely you will have all the foundational information that you need, that you can just jump right into the AI concentration. I highly suggest you reach out to our admissions reps to kind of talk about it. They might be able to kind of fast track you into those machine learning courses. And particularly some of the subjects that we cover are things like data science. That's a really good start. Machine learning, deep learning, And we also go into things like computer vision and natural language processing. Computer vision is the underlying technology for things like self-driving cars using images and videos. And then natural language processing is the underlying technology for things like ChatGPT.
We have a really profound question.
Yeah, I'd like to answer this one.
You all may have to really reflect on this one. Okay, what about the moral side of AI? How do you overlook or overcome that part? If AI were to generate everything about your project or business, how do you proudly take credit as what you're using it for is a representation of you, your ideas, and creativity?
Yeah, I want to answer this one. I was reading that. I was like, I hope somebody asks this. Okay, that's a really great question. And I'll say, again, all these, when it comes to AI, there's so many components that go into each answer because I've used it a lot for a lot of different reasons, different industries, different businesses, clients, my own projects, personal things. And 99% of the time, I was the one that fed it, and it gave me what I needed back, and then I tweaked it. I can't remember one time where I just said this, and it just gave me the entire thing, and I copy pasted, I'm done. Maybe a social media caption here or there. And so what I would say is, like, if you think about a screwdriver and a screw, it's just a tool. You're using that to finish this project, but you need the screwdriver and you need that screw in order to finish it. So it's such a great question because, I had a copywriter. I paid this person quite a bit of money. All of a sudden, ChatGPT came along, and I was able to just say, write me 6 1,000-word blogs about A, B, and C, and it did that. And unfortunately for the copywriter, that took that away from them. And I had to, I do pay a monthly fee for ChatGPT, so it wasn't free, right? A little less on the cost. But I think that's great. If you're using it and it's building the entire thing for you, it should get some credit for that. But I've used it a million times, and I have never not been the driving force behind what it created for me. So that's the answer.
Yeah, I think you have to think about, well, where do you want to put your creative time and effort into? If it's a certain thing, then do that yourself and have AI there as a resource, but not as the main one producing the content or the project. And here's a great example. Back in August, I did a 2-hour in-person workshop for an organization here in Orlando. And so I went to ChatGPT to have it give me some ideas based on the topic of the workshop for activities that the participants could do. I just wanted some fresh ideas. So it gave me a bunch of 6 different activities, and I was like, oh, these are great. I hadn't thought of some of these. Some of them I've done before. I put them together in an outline, and I sat there and was working at the slides, and I felt like something's missing. Now, I'm a public speaking coach. I do this for a living. I know what a great workshop and presentation is. And I'm like, oh, this is what it's missing. It's just a bunch of activities strung together. That's not a meaningful workshop. That's just a bunch of activities. I had to then go infuse my framework, my brand voice, my personal stories into the workshop, give it a cohesive framework, lessons for the participants to take away from, and then embed the activities into the overall cohesive workshop. So ChatGPT can do some things, but it can't put you into what makes what you do unique and what your audience wants from you.
Yeah, and I also say this question leads to what we talked about earlier, ethical, responsible, and legal use. Having those conversations within corporate America, if you're using this technology to generate product, you have to label that. Yep. You have to tell them this was created with the assistance of this AI-type tool. So, yeah, that's still an ethical, responsible, legal question that's going to be answered as well, and that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor how we identify these products, where's the proprietary ownership land. Yeah, those are some challenging questions that'll be coming soon.
Yeah, and from a legal perspective, if AI did create the creative content that you are then trying to register, let's say a copyright, you have to state that in your application and say what portion of it was created with the assistance of AI, and then you will not own that part. So, because you did not make it. And there's also all sorts of ethical issues of, well, did the generative AI take from copyrighted material that's out there and then mush it all together to create something new? And then is that transformative, or are you just infringing on people's copyrights? It's like a whole slippery slope. So it's a very interesting thing, and kind of what we were talking about with Napster. Technology is definitely faster than the law. I think if there's any lawyers watching, they'll probably laugh at that. In the past, law was so slow, right? It would be, you'd have something, there would be technology invented, people would learn how to use it for good, then for evil, then because of the evil, the law would have to be like, okay, we gotta have a rule about this because people are using it for evil, and then eventually a law would come into place and put in these restrictions. What we're seeing with AI is that the law is actually reacting much faster than it has in the past. The fact that the Copyright Office has a policy on AI already is, I think, commendable. It's amazing that that happened so fast, but I think it's probably because technology has helped things move along faster. So it all kind of works together, but you need to, it's your Jiminy Cricket. Think about, okay, is it true that I made this? What part of this did I actually make? And then you have to decide if you are willing to actually represent something that's untrue to the world, and what repercussions will happen if people find out that you were actually being untruthful. Because the loss of trust can have long-standing repercussions on your career.
All right, we have time for about one more question. So we have our last question from online. How can digital marketing leverage AI and machine learning to drive better customer engagement and conversations?
Well, how many of you love to get blast emails from vendors and stores and people that you signed up for, where it's just generic content? They're sending it to the same 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people. No. If it's a good sale with a coupon, maybe you'll open it and maybe you appreciate it. Imagine you're getting content on your social media feeds, email, whatever it happens to be, just online, that's tailored to you, that knows what you like, what you're interested in, what's going to help you to buy. Now, that also is great for the businesses to persuade you to buy. You also have to be more cognizant of what's going on. But I feel like that type of audience engagement and conversation can actually help drive businesses forward, but also as consumers, give us more of what we're looking for, whether it's content or products.
Yeah, it's like that Blade Runner movie. People
Blade
see
Runner?
that? Yeah, I'm a movie guy, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
But where he's walking past and then the screen detects who he is based on his facial recognition, has already a hyper-personalized profile of who this person is, and then gives him tailored ad right there on the billboard that's unique to him. So that's the world we're headed to.
Yeah, and again, from the cyber standpoint, that's the exact use case for phishing emails as well. So you have to be very aware that where this email came from, is this something I'm familiar with? Did I request this? Is this something I've signed up for? Don't click on emails you don't know, because that's how you get in trouble. But yeah, Minority Report is another movie that does the same thing. Gets the retina scan and he gets ads. Yeah, good stuff.
We could talk about this forever, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Let's give a big round of applause to this amazing panel. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to our students and all of you watching online. You had amazing questions and bravery coming up and getting on the microphone in front of everyone. Bex, I know you wanted to mention a little bit about the upcoming Tech Tuesday.
Yeah, so next week we have November 5th, another episode of Tech Tuesday, and
also be on the lookout for the next episode of Taking Flight. Make sure you go to Full Sail University and subscribe and follow so that you can get updates on all of this amazing content we're providing for you. And for those of you who are here for GPS, make sure that you scan the QR code. We'll make it available after this. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.